Hello and welcome to Man, Woman, God. I'm Nikki Cauchi, your host, and tonight my special guest is Monica Toussaint, who has an absolutely amazing story to share. Monica, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Nikki.
I'm so glad you could join us.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you for having me.
Now, I bet when I told everyone you've got an amazing story to share, they've all sat up in their chairs wanting to know what this amazing story is. Now, Monica, you became a Christian in 1995.
That's correct, yeah.
And then in the year of 2000, you actually had a very serious car accident.
Yes.
Share, please.
Yes, it was the end of 2000. I was on my way to rehearsal and I had to pull up. Was stationary and went to swing my legs out of the car, and a car backed back and crushed my legs between their car, my car door and my car. So which left me with a serious crush injury to my my right leg and my right ankle. My right ankle had only just been reconstructed 18 months prior.
Okay.
While sitting there, the driver of the car sort of panicked a bit, and instead of sort of putting the car into forward to drive forward, they put it reverse, and so it came back again, and that was a lot slower crash. So we had to prise the car door out of my leg, and the ambulance officers were fantastic in doing that, and off to hospital we went. The nature of my injuries was unusual. I've always said that my situation was what the word accident. It was the wrong place, wrong time of day, being lunchtime, lights shining in cars, couldn't see, you know, so yes, it was purely an accident, but because of the way that the injury happened, my bones were bent and they didn't break, and all the nerves in my legs were very badly crushed. My ankle that had been reconstructed, the method in which that surgery was done, you know, sort of everything ties into everything else, and was great and gave me more stability at the time, but because of the way that surgery was done, it meant that there was nothing that they could actually do to make my ankle usable again. So, you know, it was stamped past use by date. It left me without being able to weight bear at all on that ankle. It wouldn't hold me up. But the subsequent pain syndrome that developed was what was the most debilitating.
Right. Now, Monica, before we go any further, I want to let everybody know that before this accident, you actually were a nurse, but you're heavily into performing arts.
Yes, yes. I've been dancing since I was 4, been involved in musical theatre since the age of 13, and have done many different styles of dance, taught a lot of them, had my own dance schools, and was actually teaching some Latin dancing the night before my accident, and so the day of my accident I was on the way to rehearsals. But
emotionally, all of this and what you did before, how did it affect you?
Very interesting. I knew exactly when that leg crushed that there goes my dancing. It was just something that flashed through my head. But in saying that, I wasn't devastated. I wasn't. And I couldn't understand why I wasn't. Even the psychologist would say to me, you know, are you going through the grief process? I'm saying, nobody died. And they said, yes, but grieving your loss. And I thought, I haven't lost anything. So they were all expecting, you know, the loss of, not only the loss of mobility, but the loss of having to, you know, be able to dance, having to cope with it. I don't know, and all I can say, it was the God thing.
And what was going on between you and God? Was there a why me God?
I never did the why me God. I did do the why God. You know, there has to be some purpose, you know, and trying to find the purpose behind, you know, this thing that happened. It was a big thing, it was a big deal, so there had to be a big purpose. And I'm sort of a big person. So I was expecting, all right, you know, when's going to be my MCG occasion? You know, I'm going to be ready for it. And this is what I was expecting, because this was a big deal, that I was expecting, you know, the big purpose, you know, the stadium full of people, you know, me sharing my story and you know, people walking amongst people, healing them, and yeah. So that's what I was waiting on, was the purpose and that big purpose, because in the interim I couldn't see any purpose. There was no purpose, and I'm thinking, all right, well, you know, where do I use this experience? And I thought, no, well, he's obviously getting me ready for the MCG moment.
Okay, so then you were in a wheelchair.
Yep.
You had to, that's the only way you could get around.
Yeah, I used crutches around the house for the first little while, because I, at that stage, still had weight bearing on my left leg. But because it took a bit of a battering, an already injured knee, meant some more surgery on that knee, and henceforth we ended up in the wheelchair. The particular nerve condition that I had doesn't like surgery. So having the surgery on the left knee, I was left with that nerve condition and that pain condition in my left knee, which meant no weight bearing there either.
So what did you use for pain? What was your friend?
In the early days, we struggled to find. I tried everything that was available to me. We tried, and because of the bureaucracy that is involved after a car accident, there's a certain process to what's available to you and what will be financed, etc. So I had been offered other substances during the time, as in marijuana and morphine, which I declined at that stage. Was happy to try other things, was happy to try anything, all of which for one reason or another didn't or couldn't work.
Monica, we're just going to have to take a break. We're going to come back
certainly.
and we're going to find out what you actually did for that pain.
Yeah, certainly.
We'll be back with more after the break. Welcome back. I'm talking with Monica Toussaint, who after a car accident was left in a wheelchair. Now Monica, before we left for the break, you were telling me about your pain and how you dealt with that.
Yes, well, after, you know, not anything much working, I decided that I would relent and try some morphine. So subsequently, yes, I ended up on large doses of injectable morphine. It was all that I could cope with, and was on that for a good 8.5 years. So, of course, in that time, your body becomes addicted. I was blessed as to not have any addiction symptoms. I didn't have to struggle with foggy brains or anything like that. Right. But yes, my body was addicted to morphine, and when coming off it, you have to deal with the subsequent symptoms of that as well.
Now, Monica, you actually also have a family.
Yep.
You're married with 2 children, a son and a daughter.
Yes.
Now, this accident just didn't affect you because, you know, your family is involved. So tell me how that affected them.
Well, you know what? I had to actually ask them before coming to this interview, because at the time you're so engrossed with doctors and pain and bureaucracy and papers, and you know, God didn't get much of a look in back then, let alone my family. And if you stopped and thought about it for too long, you'd feel guilty. But in hindsight, you know, I was given the family I was given, I'm sure, to cope with things like this. My son was probably the one that didn't take really well to me being in a chair, didn't like seeing me in a wheelchair. It upset him so much that that he would avoid, you know, coming places when I was out in the chair, and that it just upset him so much. My daughter is fairly easygoing, which is such a blessing. She's been amazing. I wouldn't have gotten through a lot without her willing servant heart. You know, she was at uni and struggled during her second year because she would actually put me before study and even some lectures. So she felt, I know she felt a responsibility, but also she just wanted to do it for Mum. But as she said to me only last night, she said, well, you know, you just get in and get on with it.
Yeah, fantastic.
And amazing. And of course, my husband has very much that in his personality, that whereas a lot of men, you know, would say, hey, I didn't sign up for this, you know, just felt frustrated that he couldn't do anything more to help, especially when pain was, you know, intense and I was screaming and crying and you know, just being angry more in frustration of you know, not being able to do what I wanted to do, and things that were menial tasks were now either super hard or totally impossible to do, and just took it in his stride. You know, he was just there. And when I look back now, jeepers, I wouldn't say this to him, so he's not allowed to listen to this bit, but I owe him big time. I owe him big time, like big time. But no, he has the patience of a saint.
Fantastic.
Patience of a saint, I suppose that's why the name.
Yeah, exactly, I was going to say. But now, Monica, you seem to me someone that wouldn't just sit in a wheelchair and mope around the house every day. You seem to me that you'd be someone that would get up and, well, not exactly get up, but say, I'm going to go and do something about this. So what did you do? Because I know you got heavily involved in your church.
Yes, I did. I had one very small window of time where I did sit and do nothing, and it was when the last pain management efforts before the morphine failed, and I just went into my cocoon, and actually it was there that I actually found God in that cocoon, and then when the morphine started to help with the pain, it was like, yep, onward and upward, nothing's holding me back, I'm still capable of everything, nobody's going to see that anything is amiss, I'm going to keep up with everything, I'm in control, and which goes to what my personality is, a little bit of a control freak, slightly extroverted, and quite stubborn. That's Mum's fault, she's Irish. So I was back involved with the church. I was still choreographing shows, so my daughter with my legs.
Choir conducting?
So I conducted the choir from my wheelchair.
Amazing.
We did, you know, big local events and just our services at church, and we have a theatre company which I am heavily involved with, and I also work as a personal assistant for one of our senior pastors. So I nothing was going to be different, you know. I was still capable of everything, and wasn't going to let anything stop me from doing what I thought God wanted me to do.
Now, Monica, also, were there people speaking into your life at this time?
Oh, look, Marcy Painter would have to be probably my, after my family, was my lifeline.
Right.
We have been working together in some way, shape or form almost since I started at Gateway nearly 20 years ago. And because she knows me so well, she knew when to push, she knew when to back off, she knew when to leave me alone, and she knew when I needed a foot up behind and to get moving again. She was very transparent, and I knew I could always be transparent to her, so if I was having a rotten day, she would know I was having a rotten day, and you know, we went along accordingly. So she was remarkable.
Now, I know there was a time when you wouldn't let people help you, and she did actually say something to you.
Yes, as I said, I'm fiercely independent and wanted to still be that way, that, you know, I was reliable and I could still find a way of making everything happen, and would really bite people's head off sometimes if they, you know, let me do that, I can do that for her, let me do yeah, so I wasn't probably the nicest person. And yeah, she said to me, she said, Monica, in her inimitable fashion, she said, you have to allow people to help you. it's in their gifting, and you are stopping them from doing what God has gifted them to do. And we give and we receive. So that was a little bit of an ouch moment for me, because I had always been very happy being the Martha, the doing, you know.
We have to take a break again, Monica, but we'll come back because I want to ask the most important question. So we'll come back in a minute.
Certainly.
We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. Monica, before we went for the break, I said I had a very important question to ask you because it was involving your healing. But, you know, I think there's another important question, but I'll ask that afterwards. So tell me, because you got healed.
I got physically healed, yes, but there were many other healings that happened before then. I had lots of people praying for me over the 10 years, some of whom got frustrated because I wasn't being healed, expecting the physical healing, which is the more obvious. But I had lots of spiritual and emotional healings, which sometimes to me were more debilitating than the physical. But my physical healing happened at one of our monthly midweek services that we used to have called God Space, and it was designed exactly as that, just to give God some space. Lots of things had been happening in our church at the time, lots of attack. So Marcy designed these services around the needs of the church at the time, and so we just decided that night that we would specifically pray for specific things. And so I was taken and prayed and anointed as I had been done many times before, and then took myself back to the computer as I was on duty that night, and, you know, went home in my wheelchair and transferred into my sleeping recliner chair, and the alarm went off the next morning, as it invariably does, and I had my first injection of the morning and got up and went to the kitchen and was making a coffee. And I looked over the bench and thought, what's my wheelchair doing over there? And so it was quite surreal. I thought, oh, okay. And so I continued making the coffee.
But Monica, every other morning you got up and you got into your wheelchaare after you got your shot of morphine. But this time, how does that compute?
I just got up and went there.
You weren't
nothing
thinking.
Nothing at the time actually computed. It was just something that was natural to do. Just got up and went to the kitchen. Interestingly, just quickly, about 3 weeks before my healing, in the past 10 years, I had never had a trouble with the wheelchair. You know, I felt that this was my way of getting around. God, you know, would help me. So I didn't have a trouble accepting the wheelchair at all. However, 3 weeks before my accident, I grew an instant abhorrence to the wheelchair. I didn't want to be in it. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to have anything to do with it, which was like, okay, God, what's going on here? And so looking back...
That was 3 weeks before you got healed.
That was 3 weeks before my healing. So looking back, I think it was just God getting me ready to not need it anymore. So I had an electric recliner chair, so I pushed my little button and up I got, and over to the kitchen I went, not realising at the time, and even when looking back over at my wheelchair, it still really didn't sink in. And my daughter came from her bedroom to the kitchen and sort of looked at me and said, "Oh, what are you doing, Mum?" And then proceeded to go back and get ready for work without, and I said again, it didn't really compute to her. It was almost like she was seeing something that wasn't there. So I got ready and went to work. I had hand controls in my car. I used to drive myself to work. I'd bring them. I had a wheelchair at the office as well. They'd bring my wheelchair out and in I would go. So I arrived at work and took myself in, and I was walking down one corridor and Marcy was walking down the other corridor, and I just sort of stopped and said to her, "I think it worked." So there was this blubbering mess, you know, in the middle of the corridor, which then became the whole office in a blubbering mess. And
how did the rest of your family, how did they cope with all of this?
Yes.
Were they in shock?
Yes, yes. And there's still still to this day are things that you go to plan around. Oh, we don't have to.
Yes.
You go to plan around the wheelchair, and you don't have to. And still, there are things that I have to remind myself I can do now. You know, I don't have to wait for someone to do it, or I don't have to organise something different.
Yes. Now, Monica, the most important question, what has God done in your life through this? I mean, obviously you don't go through something and not have God change you.
Oh, goodness. Where do I start? I, as said, me before the accident, it's a phrase in our family, go and see what Monica's doing and tell her not to which my answer always was, I didn't do it, it's not my fault. So just having that little bit of understanding of the type of person that I am, I said, very independent and you know, a bit stubborn and all that. No patience whatsoever. Didn't even line up for patience the day patience was given out.
Bit of a control freak as well, as you said.
Yeah, just weeny bit of a control freak with a little bit of extroversion sort of thrown in there. But I have to say that the lessons and the things that God has softened in me are innumerable. Patience would be the biggest one. Acceptance of other people's help. And there's nothing wrong with having to rely on other people. And that there is a purpose in everything. God doesn't cause these hurts, but he certainly won't let one go wasted. So, and just a greater appreciation of my family and the gift that a family is. A greater appreciation for the unconditional love of God and the patience of other people towards you when you're not the most pleasant person to be around. And just, you're not the centre of anything. You know, I sort of tended to be like that. Right. I said I am a Martha by nature, but I have a Mary now in me as well.
Now, Monica, just quickly, I just would really like you to give some advice to people who have struggled through something like what you've been through. Because I know that you have actually gone and spoken and shared your story. So what were some of the responses?
It's been a privilege to be able to share my story. I don't mind who shares it with anyone if it points someone towards reliance on God through anything, or even finding God or recognising the need for him in their life, I'm fine. It's great when you go and share somewhere and someone will come up to you and say, you know, thank you, that was really reassuring or comforting, or it's given me some hope, or it's given me some encouragement. It's great. There's lots of people going through lots of things. Just because, you know, we have God at the centre of our lives doesn't mean that we're exempt from these things happening. And I think probably one of the big things that I could say to people is, don't expect people to understand what you're going through. It's very difficult for somebody else, especially when it's pain related or you know, depression related due to pain or due to whatever your circumstances are.
Monica, we have to stop now, but I want to thank you so much for sharing your story. It has been amazing.
Thank you for having me.
God bless you so much.
Yes, and you too, thank you.
Well, that's all we have for tonight. My special guest, Monica Toussaint, has an amazing story, and I just pray that wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I just pray that, and whatever you're going through, that God will be speaking to you. God bless you. Bye-bye.